Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Karen Orosco, who is president of Global Consumer Tax at H&R Block. Karen, nice to see you.
Good to see you, Diane.
Busy time of year. How is this tax season looking different?
Oh, it's a great question. Perhaps the biggest change this year is the expiration of many of the pandemic relief programs. So those programs were put in place over the last couple of years to provide additional tax benefit to many tax filers. So families with children or workers that did not have children or retirees, and those benefits have now expired, and that will have an impact on this year's tax refunds for sure.
A lot of our viewers are very interested in digital assets, crypto, etc. I'm curious if there's any idiosyncrasies about that in terms of tax filing that maybe we sometimes forget, since it's such a new class.
Yes. Well, if you sold crypto last year, that's treated as an investment. And so if you many took a loss on crypto last year, last calendar year, and they can use that loss to offset gains that they may have had on other parts of their portfolio. And ultimately, they can also use those losses to offset some of their regular income, but it has a $3,000 limit to offset your additional income.
Wow. So, as long as you didn't lose too much, then I guess you're okay. Now, I know you've been looking a lot at some of the demographic trends that you've seen. Let's go with one of the biggest cohorts, that's coming into the job market, Gen Z. Tell us a little bit some of the idiosyncrasies you've seen there from income, tax, etc.
Yeah, so our Gen Zs, that youngest generation, there's definitely some nuances. They appreciate more variety in their income streams. So last year, for instance, H&R Block saw 26% more people have a side hustle or a side gig. For Gen Z, that number was twofold. It was 52% of them took on a side gig or a side hustle last year. And so they appreciate that. We also know that this group in particular, about a third of them was really looking to file either on their mobile device or on their computer. And so they value, they're very tech savvy, digital savvy, which is great about H&R Block because we invented the tax prep category. And so we offer them the options to either do it themselves online or on their mobile device through our do it yourself product. But if they have questions or they get stuck or they don't understand the impact of that side gig they took on, we can connect them to one of our 60,000 tax professionals that can help them along the way. So it's really important with this generation of new filers, many of them filing for the first time, super important for us to meet them where they are, both in terms of digital tools and then providing them the right level of help and expertise along the way.
So, Karen, what are some of the mistakes people often make? Let's say the gig economy, that gets very complex when you've got multiple sources of income. Can you give me some sense of particular advice you might have of common challenges you see when you're bringing in multiple income sources?
Yes, great question. When you have a side gig or a hustle, the IRS views you as a small business owner. And so what that means is you're eligible to deduct certain expenses that a typical employee would not be eligible. But it also means that you are responsible for being the record keeper. So often what we see is we see people miss, you've got to keep all of your expenses, your receipts, and you've got to keep really excellent records. So things like how far did you drive as part of that gig or side hustle? What were the exact miles? Making sure that you have really good record keeping is critically important, and that you get that level of expertise from a tax professional that can help you understand what items might be deductible and what might not be deductible, and making sure that you get it right because you don't want to end up getting a letter or an audit down the road.
When you look at some of the other generations, obviously we've had tough times in the markets. There are people who have been looking at retirement. Any mistakes on that other end of one's career spectrum you'd want to mention?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think last year what we saw is, we did a survey and almost 70% of Americans told us that they were really concerned about the impact of inflation on their personal outcome and well-being, which means they're even more reliant on their tax refunds this year. And so when I think about one of the changes we saw last year was we saw people that borrowing against their retirement savings. And those can definitely have tax implications. So it's important that you know that and plan for that if you're using that as something to help you make ends meet during this inflationary environment.
So I imagine when people meet you on a plane or any other capacity, much like being a doctor, they start asking you all kinds of questions about their personal idiosyncratic tax situations. From whether it's over your career or just a specific season, what are some of the common questions you get, Karen, or just some general advice that you would give in terms of the fear factor we all feel when it's tax season?
Yeah, great question, Diane. I think, one of the most common questions or, pieces of advice I give is that taxes are a very personal situation. So often, parents of my kids at sporting events and things, they know I work for H&R Block, will ask, well, I have this side thing I've been doing or I have this rental property, or often it is my friend told me or my neighbor told me or my colleague told me. And the biggest piece of advice I give is that taxes are a very personal situation. So it's really important that, one, when you think about how you file, you consider your situation is different than the next person's situation. So what one person may be entitled to take in terms of a credit or expense deduction may not be the same as the next person. And so it's super important that you get the right level of help and expertise that matches both the complexity of your tax situation and your confidence in your ability to go it alone. Because some people do want to file on their own, and we offer that option. But I think one of the things that makes H&R Block great is that ability to connect with you and help you on the journey. So you don't have to choose upfront. Anyone who's ever done a DIY home improvement project will tell you it was never as easy once they got into it as what they thought. And I think taxes can be that way too. So knowing that you can start on your own, but not being afraid to ask the experts for help along the way is such an important thing. You just don't want to risk for what some people is your biggest single financial transaction of the year. And that is the way they file their taxes and the refund or the balance due that they face.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Karen.
Thank you for having me, Diane.